Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here, and to my buddy, I thank you again for those kind comments. And just to build a little bit on the private information, which is now not private, my wife's mother's family name is Van Stralen, and of course, which is very Dutch. And she married a German guy by the name of Lange, right after World War II. So if there was ever an opportunity for friends to start working together, this was it. And to your point about World War II and having one that's has a lot of roots back there, it was a pleasure for friends to help friends. As you know, we have common roots, common beliefs, common family members, common DNA. And that's what friends do. They're there for each other, and we very much appreciate the continued friendship and the support, not only for you, but for the rest of the your countrymen in working with us on so many different important issues around the world. So, and spending the time here with us is just another indication of the dedication. So thank you for that. You know, when we look at the relationship as public servants, we have a responsibility to represent our respective government entities to work together. But that's just part of it. When we become friends, when we become colleagues and buddies, as you eloquently say, that really makes it not only a good thing to do, but a fun thing to do as well. And I think that's one of the things as we look at the EU, the U.S. cooperation in cybersecurity. It's important work, it's necessary work, and things that government entities should be doing, but it's something that we as the peoples using and benefiting from the technologies do as well. When I think back to my friends from the Commission and the work that's been done, I think back to the creation of ANISA and much of the focus the Commission has put on this issue, to see it culminate in some really good structures as we move forward, bringing not only the awareness of the issues, but looking for direct ways to improve this. I think we're in a much better state. Well, I'm not going to attempt to repeat the illustrations that you laid out as far as the cybercrime issue, the child pornography issue, the big issues that we have on the table to deal with. I can only add my comments that we will continue to work on those, and this puts us in a really good structure to do that. For those of you that, of course, worked with my office in the past year, some of the things I'm going to say now are things that you already know, but for the other guests, and particularly the friends from the Commission, just a little bit of structure about some of the guiding principles that we work with that are very common, as we've discussed. First, in the area of deterrence. We can never fully realize the benefits of the digital economy as we should be able to if we don't send a clear message. There is a price to pay to interfere with that. Whether it's to facing websites, whether it's to using the ICT system, to attack other systems, there will be a price to pay for that. And it comes in different formats. Unlike the Cold War days when deterrence was about counting how many pieces that one had for the weapons of mass destruction, now we look at the areas of weapons of mass disruption. And when we start looking at those, it's not a matter of counting who has the more, but who has the ability to really impact our day-to-day lives. So as a consequence, when we come together for the issue of deterrence, we have to send a clear message that we are united, that any of the efforts to disrupt what we're trying to do will be met with failure, that no matter how much an adversary will invest, whether it's a terrorist, whether it's a nation state, whether it's a group of cyber criminals, that the price they will have to pay won't be worth the efforts that they're going to put into this issue. The other thing is the resilience. And when we look at our interdependency and the ability to pick up a mobile device and talk to my friends on the other side of the ocean, we expect that to be there. We've been able to do it for generations with landlines, and now we're looking at the ICT environment and what it gives us. Whether it's using a technology such as Skype or MSN Live or Yahoo or one of the other pieces that are out there, or using a mobile device itself or the applications on it. We have a dependency on that. So we have to make sure we have the redundancy, we have the resiliency, we have the ability to recognize if indeed we're not going to be able to depend on that for even 1 hour, that we have a plan to work around that. And we have a clear indication if indeed we're going to have a disruption. And one of the recent things that have occupied a lot of our time is the issue about the solar activity and the effect it would have on space objects and satellites, and the potential for a solar flare to be disruptive of communications or even some of the energy sector. By working together, we can identify something like that in advance and make sure we have everything set in place so we have the resilience to look at other options to communicate. And that's vitally important. You mentioned privacy. Something I think we all value as citizens, and something I think I say often, that we have to remember at the end of the day when we take off our badges or our devices that identify us as a member of a government or a member of a private sector industry, that we are the citizens that make this engine really work. So the requirements that we have for privacy go beyond what a government might want. We look at this from our own individual, and it's very personal from the privacy perspective. And making sure that we're building the technologies, as my good friend said, the two sides of the coin, security and privacy have to work in concert with each other. That's one of the key principles that we operate with in our office here, and as we look at our collaboration in the future to work forward as well. And one that I think is just so intertwined with everything we do, and that's the partnerships. Government to government, private sector to private sector, private sector to government. You know, we have the intellectual capital, we have the wisdom, the wise people, as we were discussing earlier today, that can sit there and help us build this infrastructure so where the partnerships are not just terms that we use, not something when we use the term public-private partnership that means that we've just are good friends and we wind up having good meetings, but things that we can really change in the future. Because as we build for the future, these four guiding principles have to guide our directions. And when we look at how do we achieve this and what are some of the goals, of course, for my side of the aisle that we work on, is how do we even go as far as protecting the government networks? In the United States, the largest repository of information on citizens is not with the big companies, it's with the government. We've been accumulating it in this country for over 200 years. So we have to protect that network. We have to make sure that we have the ability to count on those government systems that we depend on, whether it's the air traffic control system, whether it's the Federal Reserve System moving money back and forth between private entities. We need to make sure that we indeed are protecting those networks. And one of the challenges we have as a government is the government was never designed to do things like that. We were more outward facing. So as we look at some of the modifications, the way we do government protection in the United States, to making sure that we're looking at the lessons learned from our colleagues in the European Union, looking at the rest of the world and making sure that we're collectively taking the best practices to come together, that we indeed are protecting our global government networks. But our national networks, or our government networks, wouldn't be anything without the public national networks that we depend on. And as we look at what are the things that we can do collectively, look at the work that's being done in the private industry from an innovative perspective, to make sure we not only have the rich, robust capabilities we have in benefiting from the technology, but also building for the future as we look forward. Making sure that we indeed, everything we build takes into account that resiliency, that deterrence, the privacy protection, the ability to really benefit from this, because it also provides a market opportunity like nothing before. I was talking earlier about a trip a number of years ago to a country that one would not think is sort of on the forefront of technology. And I actually went to have a pair of shoes made. And they were really inexpensive. They were a local economy. And I said, well, I'll never come back. I'll never have an opportunity, because it's one of those countries that's just not, it's not like Brussels or Berlin or Rome that you would normally get to. And I said, I don't know what I'm going to do when these shoes wear out. The guy gave me his card with his email address. Send me an email. I'll send you another pair. You just order them through the internet. We have to be able to do that across the world. We have to do that harmonization. We have to do that leveling, so the things that we may not get to see based on our geographic region, we have the benefit to be able to purchase, which not only helps us, gives us a greater understanding of the world as we know it out there, but also give those countries the ability to be a participant in this global economic phenomena that technology has given us. But having said that, we also need to understand that there will never ever be a shortage of bad actors out there that we have to deal with. Whether it's terrorists, whether it's cyber criminals, whether it's greedy institutions, we will have to deal with them. So we need to make sure that we're doing the capacity building with our law enforcement organizations, that we have a harmonization of laws as we have at the root of many of this with the Budapest Convention, and in making sure that our international partners, both from private sector and the governments, understand how important this is for us to harmonize this, because there should not be any safe havens for the criminality that we've seen over the past 25, 30 years. We also understand that there's a defense role and an intelligence role. And as close friends and cooperating on so many different fronts, particularly in the counterterrorism realm, to look at cybersecurity as well, and making sure that the benefit that we have from gathering intelligence on the bad actors are being shared. And they're being shared to the benefit of all of us. That's one of the challenges I think as a government we have, and as we work in the future with the cooperation group, is to make sure we can bring down those barriers, so we can still isolate the bad actors, but not isolate ourselves because of these artificial barriers about national intelligence collection agencies and things of that nature. So we have to create an environment, and we can do that, and we are working towards that, to become more trustworthy and secure. And when we talk about the trusted environment, that's exactly what it has to be. Because if we want to be successful, businesses that are currently in existence on the online world, that we've reached nowhere near the potential. And I had a conversation with someone this morning who talked about a 10% increase in their business over the holiday system. That's good for everybody. It's good for the global economy, it's good for jobs, it's good for prosperity. And that's the things we need to continue to build. Now, focusing a little bit on the EU-US cooperation and the working group, we tend to want to make this a whole of government. As we discussed earlier this morning, even in the short time that my office has been in place, we found organizations within the U.S. government that have key equities in the area of cybersecurity that many times weren't even recognized by the big organizations you would recognize, like the Department of State, the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Defense. And having a whole of government approach into working together is vitally important. And I know my friends will be doing the same as well. But that whole of government is only one small piece of this. And that's where the private sector comes in. You know, when we talk about sitting down at the table and having the candid conversation about the things that are working, but just as important as my former CEO once said, good news has to travel fast, bad news has to travel faster. And that's the way the cooperation really works, where we identify where the things are not working and figure out a way forward to do that. At the outset of this collaboration of the U.S. government, we expect significant participation by the Department of Justice, Department of Homeland Security, Department of State, Department of Interior, Commerce, all these other folks that are working together as we work across with the Commissioner and her colleagues, making sure that organizations like NISA, which I have strong positive feelings about, the work that they're doing is being shown up as a high point that we all can learn from around the world and do that sort of work. But when we look at the collaboration, if we're not having the conversation with our private sector partners, we're not having a full conversation. And I can't emphasize that enough. Given that we just established the working group last month, I don't have the sort of list of things that we're working on specifically. Obviously, we'll be in contact with many of you as we move forward, because I agree with your opening comments. There is an opportunity for us to work collectively to do some of these things. As President Obama said at the US-EU Summit, America's relationship with the European allies and partners is the cornerstone of this engagement with the world and the catalyst for global cooperation. People look at what we do. They look at it very positively, they look at it very critically. But when they look at things like we're doing from the cooperation perspective, it sends a clear message that we're united in this area. And going back to my opening statement about sort of no safe harbors for the bad actors out there, this sends a clear message. The circles of trust we're looking at, we have different circles of trust. But very much like the networks, we have the networks and networks which make the internet that we have today, and we do the same thing with our circles of trust. We leverage those things, and we put them together. So when we look at the collaboration, we look at the private sector role, we look at everything that we've got moving forward on this, I ask you to participate in with us. An area specifically about the cyber incident management. You know, until such a time we build and we rejuvenate the infrastructure where it's more self-healing, self-repairing, self-configuring as we look in the future to do, we will still have incidents. And one of the ways that we look at the incidents is we're sharing the information on the front end. We minimize the duration of these incidents. We minimize the impact, which is what some of the cyber incident management things that we're looking at. The awareness raising component of it. We were talking this morning, we will never ever be able to train every end user, every consumer in our countries to be a security expert, nor should we expect to do that. We should be able to move that difficulty away from them so they don't even see it, they just receive the benefits of it. But part of it is still awareness, making sure that they understand that here's some of the parameters and the boxes from which we can work from. So when we, as the group, as the working group, as we look forward, we not only look forward to the cooperation directly, but also bringing some of our friends and allies into the discussion. As the two leaders, they're going to be bringing this together and making this work. As I've said many, many times, as each of us do our part to secure our part of cyberspace, we all benefit from it. So thank you very much, and thank you.